Awesome. We are live. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to my co host, Miss Sherry. Beautiful thing. How are you, dear?
Hello, I'm doing good. How are you, Becky?
I'm good. So excited to be joined tonight with our other team member, Sly. Hello, dear.
Hello.
Hello, Sly.
We, Sly and I, again, kind of like Dave, Sly and I have known each other for several years. She's kind of been the sidekick on several of these journeys and helped coach her in the very beginning as far as her journey. And we've just kind of been together ever since in whatever we do. So, um, do you want to first start off by sharing what brought you into, I guess initially, like I said, it was the coaching with me as far as how we first met, but what you were dealing with, kind of a little backstory is.
So my name is Sly. I come from a normal dysfunctional family. And which is generations of addiction and mental health issues. I am a recovering addict from the drugs, the kind you can go to prison and jail for. I do believe there's other drugs in our lives that are legal. So I had about I have a little over 8 years with a 12-step program for that. But about year four, I realized that I had just switched drugs. I was standing I was after work. I was standing at a local fast food restaurant and I looked up at it and I didn't ask myself, like, what was I going to eat for dinner? I had a stressful day at work. I said, what am I going to get to make myself feel better? And then I had this fleeting thought, what if it wasn't enough? Was I going to go use? And that was enough to kind of send me on this journey. I've been on a couple of platforms, going sugar free, those steps. But along the way, uh, I had found some mental health professionals that use food and nutrition for that. I also have borderline personality, insomnia, bipolar, and sprinkle on some anxiety after I got clean. So I was dealing with a lot of that and wanting to heal. And I am not against medications, but some of the medications as I was taking just wasn't working for me. And I found Christopher Palmer at that time, and I needed keto in my life to make those things happen. Um, it was after COVID. I was going, it wasn't quite keto enough for some
Mm-hmm.
things. Like I didn't eat the 7 salads a day. I didn't do this. Those things weren't in my genre really. Um, and I found a platform, and one of my friends, Kathy, just like just off the beat one day, just was like, I'm fat fasting. She didn't even know what she was saying. She didn't know what she was going with that, but it clicked in my head. I was like, there's got to be something behind that. And then I fell into Becky's lap on a platform, literally. And they were calling her the fat queen and this and that. And I was like, so there is something behind this. There is something behind it. And I kind of found that new space of like less, I guess the clicky word right now is more like ketovore, like,
Mm-hmm.
or a high fat carnivore, or however you want to push it. But it felt more intuitive for me with that, and her carnivore waffles that became my staple for 6 months. I think I lived off of carnivore waffles for at least 6 months minimum.
Yeah. Plus butter. Add
Plus
the
butter,
butter on
yes.
top of it.
You put the fat on top. But yeah, so with her help and communities and working with a practitioner, I have been med free. What is it? About 2 years now?
Mm-hmm.
About 2 years now. So that's how I got here.
Which, I mean, you went from being on how many different medications? And some of them were pretty hardcore meds.
Yeah, I was on antipsychotics, and I was on 4 different medications. So I had 2 for my bipolar, and an antipsychotic was one of those. And then I would rotate through insomnia medications because nothing was working at that time. Like I could go to sleep, but I couldn't stay to sleep. And I was having some pretty, like I had to put a lock on my refrigerator. That's how bad it was at night for me with some of the medications that they had me on. I was texting friends, and if they would be at fellowship, I would have them bring me food, and it wouldn't be like a normal kind of thing. It was like I was in a haze from the medication when I would be calling them and texting. They actually used to sit outside of meetings and compare Ambien text with people. It was so bad. It was very scary at sometimes. Like I didn't cook, but like I had woken up once and a whole thing of peanut butter could be gone, or I could wake up and a jar of vitamin C gummies would be completely empty. Or I woke up once and I had 24 protein shakes, empty Premiered protein shakes laying around my bed from the medications and having sleeping issues.
Yeah.
So, but
Did the medications cause weight gain?
They most definitely did. It didn't help that when I went to treatment, that it was like a carb-induced coma that you could go into there. And everything was carby, and then you ate, and then you ate, and then you ate some more. And like they would have like a buffet on Sundays of just carbs. So I had never, even with I gained a lot of weight with my pregnancies. When I got clean, I had never reached like 200. And I was right there. They also prevented weight loss. Like I could try a lot of different things to do things. I don't know how many times I tried, whatever it was, and nothing would work. Whole30, follow it to a T. And it was still like preventing me from doing that. And like I said, it wasn't, the sleep meds themselves wasn't working anymore. They would.
And I can remember in the beginning, you even did more of like a dirty keto.
Yeah.
You had mentioned trading, addiction for addiction. And I can remember, you calling one night because you were, going after like the Quest bars and you just wanted, a bunch of them, which because they're keto, right? Everyone says that, those type of foods are keto, and not just one bar, but the bag of bars. And I'm like,
oh yeah, I remember
friend.
that. I was going through a tizzy and an emotional breakdown of sorts, and I went in to GNC.
Yep.
And I probably bought one of everything that was in the flavor that I wanted. But I bought them, but luckily I had somebody to call, and I didn't eat them. I didn't eat any of them. I didn't return them either. I was a bit too shameful to go back and return them. I did take them to my friends and drop them off at the tattoo parlor. They got to see my shame.
I was just saying, because I remember talking to you and tell you, drop them off. And that's one of, the benefits in having someone that knows kind of what you're going through, knows the journey, and is able to be there no different than your sponsor on the other side, but being able to have a coach. And
do you remember the peanut butter day, the day? I had went to use an interruption technique and walked to was going for a walk, but the cash wise, there's a store just a block and a half from where I live, and I was in there turning around every peanut butter jar trying to find a peanut butter jar that didn't have sugar in it. Like, I was trying, I wasn't just completely giving up, but like, and then I came back and I used my tools a little later than I should have, but I did use them, and they became easy. The more that I used them, they became easier and easier to do.
So speaking of the tools, because I know you had mentioned, the higher fat side and going into this fat, and I know we've done several fat fasts over the last 2 years. Primarily, we've done the fat for several years, but the actual fat fasting, up to 5 days, I think is right about where we're sitting on various ones. You did one this year. The last one I did was back in November. But speak to some of your tools and how you shifted off of the medication and now are utilizing diet and the fat to help with that mental aspect.
Well, first of all, I want to mention that I did not come off my medications by myself. I used a mental health professional to taper off my medications, and Becky as a coach to help me get to where I needed to be able to come off those medications. And I had to provide data to the professional that I was in ketosis and consistent with that. And so I used the Keto Mojo was one of the tools, but like the fat fasting is kept me at the higher fat and where I needed to be to heal my mental health. And like we were talking earlier, I wasn't meaning to, but I was up to like 300 grams of fat a day and not gaining any weight. Were you seeing the pictures? There's pictures like you could see the difference even in the body composition and stuff like that. But it also helped with that healing and doing the fat fast. And I mean, 6 months, I was probably eating the high fat carnivore waffles, which is just eggs, yolk, butter, and more butter for about 6 months. And I thrived during that time. Workouts, work, long hours, and managing for my recovery and meetings with it.
Yeah, so say your activity level, I mean, you end up and have done Tough Mudders, you've done Zumba, you do rebounding all the time. You're also doing your cycling. You have your bicycle that I think this year alone, you've already done over 700 miles in 7 months.
Yep. So, in the beginning, activity wasn't a huge part. I was really just concentrating on the nutrition part. But after we got that under wraps and stuff, I started focusing more on putting exercise into, and the rebounding. That's my favorite. I love rebounding in my living room. The Zumbas, that community itself is a whole nother community that you have there too. And those ladies are awesome and able to keep up and do things with them. And I think that's what I like about the fat fasting too, is like you're still getting energy, but you've got that fasting mimicking benefits that go on with that. Plus the fat that you get for your energy for your brain and giving, that rest from those sugar spikes from during the day. So, and the Tough Mudders. I did complete my second Tough Mudder this year. So that was exciting. Things that I didn't think that I would ever be able to do. And we do our challenges, our Stop Soldier Suicide challenges too, which we did in June was the rowing and stuff. So we are always keeping busy with movement.
Which, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're constantly going, so the energy level is definitely there. Denver seems like it tapers off, and it's not a sporadic energy. It's a consistent energy that you have throughout the day. And I think that is really important when it comes to the aspect of, having adequate protein, but then in doing the fat focus. Because even on your other day, your work days, when outside of the fat fasting, you're still putting a fair amount of fat in there on your eating days.
Yeah, I still use a therapeutic keto approach for, I'm going to say 98% of the times. There will be times that maybe my protein's a little higher or whatever, but I use a therapeutic keto approach for consistency for my mental health. So that is, some people would consider it low protein. I consider adequate protein for myself. I am 4'11", and I have not suffered. And I've done 3 body scans and stuff like that because I was working with with an instructor or trainer and stuff, and he knew what I was doing too, and he actually started going more towards it after we had talked and stuff. He's like, yeah, my buddy was talking about that carnivore. I was like, yeah, I was like, I do a higher fat, because he tried to sell me a food program.
Mm.
I was like, I don't need that. I got my own. Thank you.
So what was your top weight?
200.
200.
And it could have tipped the scale a little over 200 if I would have checked it before I started doing anything else. But it was at 4'11", 200 pounds is a lot of weight. A lot of weight. It was my highest.
And now?
I am at about 141, give or take a pound. You can float sometimes between like 138 to 142, 43, back and forth in there. But yeah, I'm down to 141. So that is also another journey and can be a struggle some days, because we're doing this, and you can look at internet keto and see all the people with all they've done this, they've done that. I have gone with the approach sanity over vanity. A long time ago, I gave that power over to that. There's things that I could probably do in order to get to the perfect weight for my size and body, but I'm not willing to give up my mental health aspect of it. So thank you, Tina.
But I think that is where we all need to look is, do we want our health? Do we want to end up and be mentally stable? Do we want the energy? Do we want to sleep well? All these foundational aspects over necessarily the number on the scale, because obviously this number on the scale can lie. As much as, yes, we do want the weight loss, but a lot of that, we were kind of talking about it earlier as well, in regards of the cortisol. And that is part of the issue when you had said, you did too much fasting and it kind of backfired. And so what is the difference that you have seen other than cortisol and doing the fat fasting with the different methods? I know you've also done here lately a cycling approach of maybe
that
putting
did not work for me. I tried it for like a week. And to be fair, it was like I tried to keep an open mind. I do not try to stay dogmatic with what I do. I did like what he had to say. I do experiments on myself all the time, and just to see if I can find something. I found that just to point this out too, using the higher fat, I don't take sleep medications anymore, and I don't need them anymore. So that's a big difference. I am 47. I have had sleep issues since I was 13. So to be able to sleep at night and not worry about if I am on how many different medications, which I don't take any of them anymore, and get sleep has been amazing. And I did try. I did my version of it. The gentleman that was talking about carb cycling, he was like wanting you to do like 0 carbs and then have like I think it was like 167 and then 200 and some. And that just seemed crazy in my head. Like that would wreak havoc on your body. First of all, I feel like to go that high, especially if you don't do it, and you're all the things that can metabolically go wrong. I did like his thought process of like confusing the body, maybe like giving it that confusion or chaos, as like what I like to call it. So I went as high as I could possibly think about going, and that was like up to 50. And I don't think I ever made it to that 50 mark. I think I stayed in the like 30s, but I didn't like it. And I do believe the night that I did the highest carb, I didn't sleep well that night. Which is weird because the people that he also does exercises and stuff. And I love his exercises. They've been great for me in the morning, especially with getting into busier season and stuff. But I did put it out there in our community that like, this is what I do. I'm not following this. And somebody is like, they said they had the opposite effect with my approach. And I'm like, you didn't give it long enough. Just give it some more time. You'll be fine. But I think between the 0 and 20 range, and mine is usually between 0 and 10, because I mean you do get carbs in with the egg yolks and stuff like that, and that's fine. But I do keep my fat. I try to consistently keep it to between the 3:1 to 4:1 ratio. So, and for people that don't know what that means, is for every gram of protein that I eat 3 to 4 grams more of fat.
Which keeps you in that therapeutic level of ketosis.
Yes.
And keeps you stable on the energy. And you're able now this far into it to recognize going into something. So again, that tool in the tool belt of once you get into your stressful time, or you know that you have a stressful event, you're able to kind of boost that a little bit more to get even deeper into that therapeutic ketosis.
I do. I boost it. I have a certain level. I'll become more stricter on where that stuff lies. I do use exogenous ketones as a tool. I don't expect them for weight loss. Again, I know a lot of people, like there's a lot of companies out there that have that weight loss thing for them. I do not use them for that. I use them strictly to help with the mental health aspect of it during stressful times. And they have helped tremendously for that, along with the touch points that we use. And, you know, now those things are miracle workers. I went and did EMDR during COVID. And when I did that, they couldn't get close to you. So they did these hand buzzies in each hand. So they did the alternating buzzies in your hands as you did EMDR therapy. And my thought process on that, again, like somebody puts this bug in your, I'm like, well, if this works for past trauma and it works this well, what can it do now? Like in those moments. And there was things out there was tools out there that we could find and use. And I do use them, and they're amazing. Also just to have in that toolbox. Kevin's breathing, you know, tool. That's going to be something else that I use. We were just talking about it today. Like, I now have alternating days set in the evenings of one night I might use my touch points. The next night I might pull up one of Kevin's videos, because I can't make it to his 5 o'clock time all the time. But that's one of the wonderful things about the community, is that, you know, we're able to record our community meetings. So if you do miss a meeting, or if it's not at the right time and you want to learn, we can go back. And even as, you know, maybe being a coach of that community, I'm going to use that tool and that access to be able to go and use this amazing tool that we're provided in the community.
Yeah. So Deb is asking in regards of the touch points. So I obviously have mine right here, but go ahead and explain.
So what they do is you put them on each arm. There's 3 different settings that you can do. I just usually use the number 1 setting, but basically it's an alternating stimulation of the brain. And what it does is it reduces that stress so it doesn't get you stuck in your fight, flight, or freeze. And that's what EMDR does initially. With EMDR, though, you are usually going through some trauma-based effects with a negative and positive belief, and then you go through a trauma that fixes that. And I'm going to tell you, it's like magic to do that. So if you have some trauma and you need some EMDR therapy, go get it. But if you have everyday stressors, those work just as well. I can remember using them. For instance, like I use them regularly, but an incident that I can tell you for sure was me and my son got into our first adult fight. And I don't know if any of you guys have adult children or have ever argued with those adult children, but I wish he was 10 and telling me he hated me. That would have been easier to deal with. But he's not, and he didn't. Something like that, especially with my borderline personality disorder and things like that, could lead me into a spiral, because I deal with abandonment issues. That's my number 1 borderline character, whatever you want to call it there. And I used those touch points that night. And when I woke up the next day, I hadn't spiraled out of control. I wasn't still obsessing about everything that had just happened. I was able to deal with it as a grown adult and be like, you know, give him some space, approach it right, and then come back and respond appropriately to the situation and not spiral out of control. And that's amazing for me.
Mm-hmm.
That can be amazing, especially with abandonment issues that I have. I have a thing of like, oh, well, he's just going to hate me, so I should just walk away. I don't do that anymore, by the way. And that's another thing with the high fat approach and knowing that it works is like, you know, you can see people and how differently you interact and you respond to the world than other people do, especially if they have the same mental health issues that you do. Even on the medications and being what somebody called, you know, inactive or, you know, treated or regulated or any like that. My mental health was nowhere near what it is today. Nowhere near.
And again, I think that is very important that you are able to respond appropriate and not just react or fly off the handle or, you know, spiral out of control. You have all those foundations laid in place as far as your journey goes of the tools. You've got, you know, your sleep, because when we don't sleep, I mean, that leads to a whole nother issue. So if you're dealing with insomnia, that's, you know, going to end up and lead to higher cortisol. It's going to lead to, you know, several downstream things. And so really working on the foundation, putting, you know, the other meanings that we offer into place, putting, you know, all of this stacks together and makes our journey, right? It's not just one thing as far as what we're doing, it's all of it. And that can seem overwhelming for some people, But like you said, it is a process of incorporating that. And speaking of, you know, what the community has to offer, you host one of our meetings in addition to coaching, but you do end up and host one of our meetings if you want to talk about kind of the mental health aspect and why or when, I guess, that meeting is.
Why? Because it's near and dear to my heart. You know, that's why I went and took Georgia Edie's class. You know, that was scary because I'm in that class with doctors and nurses and psychiatrists and psychologists and all these people that have these big degrees and letters and numbers behind their names. But it was one of the best things I had ever done. Unfortunately, it was like it was a suicide that had happened in my life that really pushed me into actually taking the course and stuff, and then continuing my education with Benton for a holistic addictions approach. But I believe that, you know, addiction is real. It runs across all aspects of it. I also believe that addiction is a mental health issue. So my mental health and my addiction are one and the same. And if I can help people with lived experience and guide them, or, you know, they come with questions. Right now, we're doing a mix of just like questions or going through Christopher Palmer's book on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock Central Time. And just educating people on what they can do is important to me, and showing people that it does work. I do believe, like, you know, the people that we help, we may never even talk to. We may never even know to help. One of my closest, dearest little sisters, you know, not by blood, but by bonding, you know, she came to me yesterday and she's like, wants to talk about it. And she's like, I'll pay you. And I'm like, I have been waiting for you. Just sitting over here. So, you know, I want to be able to be there for people when I didn't see what could happen. It took a long road for me to be able to get to Becky. You know, there was a lot of summits that I heard people talk about things and do things, but I didn't have nobody there to help me that had been through it. And I know Becky's not um hasn't had experience with the mental health aspect of it, but she was there to guide me through the nutritional effect about that. And she has helped me with even mindset. Like, I wasn't getting up and going to put my feet in no grass every morning, or looking at the morning sun, or doing anything like that. And I've went to, you know, at least opening up my window when I'm jumping on my jumper, to like taking that 10 minutes to go outside and put my bare feet on the ground, or, you know, the cold exposure, and just shocking everybody doing barefoot walks in the snow and stuff.
When you thought, the, you know, our team wackadoo that we end up when we do all our challenges couldn't get any more crazy, we're going to end up and start, you know, sprinkling in all these other aspects of life, right? And
it's not, it doesn't have to be like, I don't do it every day. I try to do it most days, and I don't get up at sunrise, but I still go out and do it. You know, I still go out and get the sunlight and stuff. And I have been doing it at my own pace, and what I can put in there, and what's capable of me putting in there. And then I challenge myself a little bit more. I mean, like, well, you can do this. You could do this.
And I think that's important, is for people not to get overwhelmed. You know, we suggest items that they can end up and add. We suggest an avenue that they can end up and go, but also not feeling overwhelmed to the point where they don't do any of it, right? And that's where each of us kind of bring, you know, a piece to the puzzle, whether it's the breath work with Kevin, whether it's the mental health on your side, whether it's, you know, the body wellness with Renee and Dave, or, you know, whatever other area that we have within all of our meetings in the community, doesn't mean that you have to, you know, jump in on a Monday and do it all that week. We provide various challenges, and you've been through several, you know, challenges with me that we've done over the years. But yeah, it's always one of those, do the best you can, progress over perfection.
Absolutely. I think you'll see way more with consistency, progress over perfection, consistency over perfection than anything else that you can, you know, if we're looking for perfect, we're never going to find it. I can find an excuse every day to use if I'm looking for perfect. And if I'm just doing the best that I can for that day, then, you know, then that's good enough. And I think the diet culture, the diet cult out there has really brainwashed us of like, you have to be perfect. And then if you're not perfect, then go off the deep end and you can start tomorrow. And that's not right either. Not everybody is going to be perfect. People are going to have faults. People are going to end up calling their coach with a bag full of things from GNC. And what if I would have eaten some of them first and then called her? That would have been fine too. Because then I don't wait for the next day. I just take the next moment and do that. And that's where you gotta be able to release the shame and guilt of not being perfect, because we're not perfect, because we're human. I'm human. Yeah. I mean, sometime I was granted immortality a few years ago by my battle buddy, but I'm still human.
Yeah, and that is, you know, we do make mistakes. We do end up and slip as the journey goes, but it's not the end of the road, and it's not led to be a complete detour. It's just a speed bump. You know, we get right back on, and we build our network of people that we can reach out to, and a community that will support us and will understand us, but still has those open arms to welcome.
And how long have you been at this now?
So my journey began on this end of it in 2019. So about May of 2019, I've been working at this.
So what I hear you saying is you've tried all different kinds of things. You had to figure out in all of it, through all the noise that we hear, what worked for you as an individual.
Yes. Because there is no one size fits all for anybody or anything. Like, I had to figure it out. I had to do my own research on myself. I can take all the information that people give me, but you still have to figure out, does this fit? Does this work right? Like the first time I wanted to do carnivore, I was scared away because I had an influencer tell me I had to eat nose to tail. But then I had somebody like Ken Berry tell me eating hot dogs was good enough. You know, like it was a good enough start. I had one keto person telling me that I had to eat 7 big bowls of salad a day. That's not going to work for me. That's impossible for me to do. But I can eat 7 egg yolks in a day with 7 tablespoons of butter. That works for me.
Sly's the only one I know of that has done the math to figure out how to multiply the carnivore waffle recipe in proper ratio. She makes it like by the bulk batch.
20. I will take a cut. I would take a whole thing of Costco eggs, 2 whole things of Costco eggs, and make a batch for the week. And then I would just do them daily on how to, yeah. They were so good. They are so good. I've gotten rid of the waffle maker though, because it just is so messy and extremely hard to clean. And I'm a really busy girl. Um and so I try to make them as easier. So I have gone to just making them as pancakes at this point. But yeah, I would, and that's what I would do during the meetings that we'd be on. Like we would be having our meeting. Like when we get done here, we'll go to the macro fat fasting meeting. And during that time period, as I'm getting my community in, that's when I can food prep. Now, granted, my food prep is cracking eggs and getting rid of the egg whites, but and mixing it all up. But it works for me. I can guide anybody with tools that are looking to do better with their mental health. And that's my passion, is to help people with their mental health. Like I said, I have my own struggles and stuff. I've watched so many friends in my 12-step community struggle with mental health, even after getting clean off of the drugs you can go to jail for. And still struggling with that. I had a friend a little over a year and a half ago, about a year and 3 months ago, whatever the time frame is, he struggled with mental health and was not taking his medications the way he should have been taking them. And he ended up committing suicide. And, I remember at the beginning of that, he had called me over to his house and I had been off my meds, right? And I knew that I could help him. But I remember him telling me that he was struggling. But they had just started on lithium and it scared me because I didn't know if I had the tools to help him. So I told him to get stable and then come see me. And those next steps didn't happen. Like we interacted, but those next steps didn't happen. And it hadn't been a year later, he ended up committing suicide. To know that I can help people with nutrition to get out of that mind frame is really important to me. So I did. That's what really kind of pushed me to seek the credentials, mindset to really put it out there to help people.
While Sly is talking, let's open up questions. If anyone has questions for Sly, go ahead and put that in the chat and we'll ask her because I'm sure you may have some burning questions that Becky and I aren't thinking of to ask. So definitely throw that in there. Renee, yes. Renee said that you have a PhD in life. And you do. So the first, I'll tell you, the audience, the first, I decided, well, I'm going to check out Sly's Zoom, right? So I jumped in and she's talking about addiction, right? And I'm in the back of my head thinking, I don't have any addiction. Like I don't, I don't use or abuse drugs, right? I don't drink alcohol. I don't. And she started going through this questionnaire. And as we're sitting there, I'm like, that would be yep. That would be a yep. And that would be a yep. And it was like, oh my goodness. I have a very serious food addiction, right? And so that was very, very eye-opening to me. But you brought up the word abstainer. And go ahead and explain that while we're waiting for questions, if you know what I'm talking about.
So abstainer means you do not interact. You have to abstain from the drug. You cannot moderate. Um, Moderation is a unicorn for an addict, a real addict. A harmful user with time and space may be able to go back and moderately use without abusing. But somebody with a true addiction or an addict brain um, will never be a moderator. We must abstain from the drug. And as I mentioned a few times, I talked about the drugs you can go to jail for. I do believe that sugar and ultra processed foods are drugs. I do believe that they're drugs. Um, and I do believe that, they are a high cause of the mental health issues that we have in our society today. Yes, you can be predisposed to have certain things from family genetics, like, maybe if MS was more of a thing, maybe I wouldn't have bipolar, maybe I would have gotten MS, from the use or whatever. But my type of mental health issues is predisposed from my family. Like there's a lot of it in that way. And I have never seen, and Christopher Palmer talks about it in his book. Like, we can blame it, say that we're just more aware of it, we're doing this and that, but I don't believe that. I do believe that it's so high because of what we're putting in our bodies, and that we are becoming. I even think, like, if we weren't getting such high sugar and high processed food as little kids, would I have ever ended up with a street addiction of drugs? Would that have happened? Would I have activated that, you know, a addict gene, addict brain so early on? And I was an addict way before I picked up a drink or anything else. Um, the Christopher Palmer's book is named Brain Energy. Would I have gone to that? And I knew before I picked up the street drugs that I had a high response to being addicted. Um, but, like I said, I grew up in a normal dysfunctional family. And I got to a point where I couldn't deal with what was going on around me anymore. And so that's what happened. But, I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't have been through those roads. I wouldn't be able to be here to help people. So I don't feel like I don't play the victim stance on it anymore. I am responsible for my recovery. I'm responsible for my recovery of my mental health and my well-being for myself, and to be able to be there for my children. So,
and now having that power, or the superpower, if you will, to be able to be on that side to help and empower others is a very powerful tool.
It is. And I think that's why we're all here, whether it's mental health, addiction, whether it's, other physical helps, diabetes, whatever it is that we have life experiences in, we can help others in a way that we've never been able to help others before, with just being online and being able to communicate really without platforms like this. I wouldn't have known that I could still keep my sponsor that moved away. It being able, like, I've helped people connect with people in Australia, Switzerland, all these other places that I've coached people from, and just, realizing no, they're not right there in front of me. But I can connect with them on a very deep and personal level, and we can help each other. And that has been a great, it's been amazing, actually, to the point of like when it was time for me to go back home to the sponsor that I had when she was here, she'd moved away. I was so easy. I was like, I knew we did this, but we can do this. I know we can. If I can connect with somebody in Switzerland and in Australia, I can connect with somebody in Florida.
Yeah.
Or, you know, Nebraska, or, you know, even one of the ladies, one of my ladies, I love her so hard. They gave her to me because she was a struggle. She was not easy to deal with, but she fought you on everything. And you know, we're still friends today. We're still working on it, but like, and she came out here to an inpatient treatment, you know, and she came to my house and visited, and somebody that I would have never connected before unless we had these kind of communities that we have here today. And it's just amazing how we can do it.
I think
Absolutely.
that, oh, sorry, Becky, go ahead.
I was just going to say absolutely, which is also why for the next 24 hours, we are running a 50% off if they use your name. So if they use code SLY within the next 24 hours, they can end up enjoying this community and get that aspect of being with someone, being able to connect and have that deeper level. But go ahead, Sherry.
Well, I'll just add on to that. And I know, Sly, you referred to this. They're recorded. So I can go back and listen to it again. You know, so I think that's a value right there that a lot of communities don't offer. But I like that fact that I can do that. I also like the fact that, you know, it's a tribe. It's you know, if I'm struggling, and I struggle, actually not as much as I used to, but I had high anxiety, and the more I do carnivore with high fat, I also find that my anxiety levels down to almost nil. And so the therapeutic side of what you've done, utilizing the tools that you had in a community, is so invaluable that because a lot of people come out this with, I just want to lose weight, right? Just want to get thin. I just want to, you know, me personally, mine was I wanted to reverse my type 2 diabetes, and I wanted to get off my meds, and which I am off of now. But I know, right? But there's still other aspects to it. I was talking to Becky earlier today, and we were talking about, you know, when someone says to me, oh, I could never stop eating the sugar, right? Now it's kind of a signal of an addiction. And you wonder, you know, we were talking about the traumas in with even food. And one of the things I jokingly, every time Becky mentions eating um, sardines, I just cannot go there with, it's like, I can't. Well, I've been reading a trauma book, and I figured out that growing up, my parents would make fish. My dad would fish. They would fillet it. They would cook it. And it would be careful, there's bones in it. And so I associated any kind of fish with bones and choking. So, and I just realized that literally today. So it's just funny how your past traumas, your past period all plays into everything that we in the community is doing. And that's why the circles that we have is help me with my words,
Therapeutic.
vast, you know, that, you know, again, if you join the community, you can find something where you plug in. You mentioned Kevin's breath work. I mean, that's been invaluable to me. I was doing some of that breath work before we even started, because usually while we're doing these lives, my blood sugar goes up. I literally can watch my blood sugar go up because I'm nervous. And all that. So it helps in all aspects of life. So, gosh, I just think you're just a superhero in my eyes, Sly. And it's just been a pleasure getting to know you.
Well, thank you. My first community that I know that things like this work because I'm in a 12-step program, right? So I know that it works. But at that time in my 12-step program, it wasn't helpful for what my goals were, mainly because, there was a lot of like, well, at least it's not the street drugs. At least I'm not doing this. At least I'm not doing that. So it's gotten a lot better over the last 4 years with my consistency. But I paid $1,200 for my first community because I knew that this type of thing worked. I knew that it would work. The way that it's set up and having that response with it. So this isn't that much money compared to what I paid, close to compared to what I paid for my first one. Was it worth it? Every bit of it. As a matter of fact, the person tried to talk me out of it, said I didn't need it. And I said, you're wrong. I do. I know what I need. And it can just be invaluable, really.
And that's why it is priced, less than $20 a month, with the 50% off, because the people that need the help aren't going to end up and be able to afford the $1,200 like you did for your first program.
I couldn't afford it. I had to scrape and scram to make the payments the way that I did. But that's where I was with desperation. And I don't want somebody else to have to feel that way. And that's another reason why I like this community too, because it's not out of reach for people.
Exactly.
To get the help they need.
We do have a question.
Okay.
It says, Sly, what is your opinion on using meds in conjunction with diet?
For mental health or what meds?
I'm assuming mental health.
Oh, absolutely. I think that it would raise that bar of the 40 to 50% of people that don't work for. I think that using nutrition with your meds can enhance the effect that they're supposed to happen, because you're not having that, you're not getting enough insulin to your brain using the carbs and the sugar. I'm not a science person, but I know that is what Georgia Edie has told me in two different, like her 5-week period and in her lecture with Bitten, is that your brain needs to be able to use the insulin, and you have insulin. If you have insulin resistance in your body, you have insulin resistance in your brain, but it's worse in your brain. So if you are getting your brain healed and using the diet, that means the meds have a better chance of working the way that they're supposed to in your brain and not fighting against the toxins and stuff that you're putting in there by eating the crap with them. That's my opinion. I would go back on meds if I needed them. I definitely would. My very last med was like a Vistaril or something of that nature. So what that was used for is like in the moment anxiety. If I needed it, I carried around that bottle for a year. I threw them away. I didn't need to use them. I would use the fat, and even that was tallow whip bites, whatever it was, butter, you name it. I've eaten it to help myself calm down. I have a whole stack of them. I've got another one in there in my freezer at work for during the day for those kinds of things. Start with the fat, then, like I said, I do use some of the exogenous ketones for that, but only for that. So yeah, I think it can enhance it a lot if you don't want. And just like my friend, you know what I mean? He was on lithium. That's some heavy stuff. And usually people are on heavy medication. So I think that you will have to continue taking your meds. I did. I continued taking my meds even as I was feeling better, even if I was doing the high fat, until I found a professional that could help me come off them.
And I think that's important to work with the professional, as well as realizing that there's a time, a place, and a purpose, whether it's supplements or whether it's the mental health medication. There is that time that you may end up in need, or, diabetes medicine, or whatever the case may be, where you can gradually, possibly progress with that help of a practitioner to come off of it. But
that's what I do. That's my whole goal
again
in life, is to get you where you need to be. And I can even direct you into a whole database of mental health professionals that can help you taper off your drugs if that is your goal, to be off of the medications. But if you need to continue on, but I bet you they work better if you're eating better. I bet you they do.
Mm-hmm. Well, my dear, any final thoughts? Where can people find you other than the Tuesday mental health meeting at BNC Community?
5150 Keto Warrior on IG. Sly Joe Watts on the Book of Faces. I don't really do YouTube videos or anything like that right this second. I'm not that high up. TikTok is still 5150 Keto Warrior. Took me a long time to get to that name, but that's where we've landed. If anybody wants to know what 5150 means, it means crazy. It's actually a cop code across the lands for psychiatric code.
Ties your mental health into your keto journey, and of course,
absolutely.
You are the warrior. You have had amazing success throughout this, and I definitely appreciate you joining us, I should say, as part of the team at the BNC Community. For those of you that are maybe listening and are looking at finding it, it is in the bio of our YouTube, but you can also go to bnccommunity.com, which again, 24 hours only. You can end up and use the code SLY to get 50% off. That does lock it in for a lifetime. So as long as you are a member, that code will lock it in. It's not just off the first month. So you will have that savings continuous. And I agree with Tina. We love you, Sly, and we appreciate you. Any other final words from you, ladies?
Come join us. Come join us. My name has never been worth so much as it is right this second. So use my name. Get that 50% off for lifetime.
I knew she would like to have in her code, her name as a code to get 50. I knew it. I told Becky that today. I was like, let's use Sly for the next 24 hours.
I'm about ready to go tell somebody about it right now.
Awesome. All righty. I will see several of you that are joining us in the chat over at BNC for the nutrition, macro, and fasting, water and fat fasting class. And Sly, have a wonderful evening. After you tell your friend, feel free to jump in there and join us.
Oh, I'll be there. I'll be right there. I don't know how to get out of this thing, though.
We'll get down.